Hey everybody, welcome to the show. You know where you are, the 9 at 9 with me, Tigo. And today we're going to talk about something that everybody is talking about, and very few are getting it right. Yeah, we're going to talk about storytelling, not the ones where your mom used to sit there and tell you about the three little bears. We're talking about your storytelling. So sit right there. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back. Yeah, you heard me right. We're going to talk about storytelling. It is an amazing power. And if you haven't mastered it in your business, or maybe even in your life, you want to be here today because our good friend Jessica T. Moore is in the house. Yeah, I seen her on the internet too with Les Brown. We're going to talk about that too. She's here talking about it.
Hi.
Hey, how are you? Welcome to the show.
I'm well. How are you?
I am awesome. Okay, so a little jealous, a little envious. I mean, you know that Les Brown's my superhero, one of my superheroes, and you just get to hang out and stuff. We'll get into that later. But I know that storytelling with him is humongous. I've been listening to this man since the 90s. And storytelling is huge, but it's gotten even bigger now. Why is that? Why is storytelling so important?
So just speaking from, like I do a lot of work with Les Brown, and one thing that he teaches is that when you give someone information, it connects with like one part of the brain. But when you tell them
Mm-hmm.
a story, it hits like I don't know the scientific behind it, but like at least three parts of the brain because people remember stories more than they remember your information. So it's really important, especially if you're trying to get people, like buying into a product or a service. You want to be able to tell them a story so that they can remember you.
So when you're talking about storytelling, are you talking about telling your personal history, or are you telling a story associated with that product or service, or both?
Both. So it's actually both. And that's a really good question because I do have a coaching program where I help people to tell their stories. And a lot of times they come in and they're like, I don't know what story to tell us. I got so many stories. And I'm like, well, you don't want to just go around like you said earlier. It's not a bedtime story. You want to be strategic and tell a story that's going to get people like what connects you to your product and service. Because at the end of the day, people, they don't buy products and services, they buy into you, your brand, your story, your mission. So that's why like I teach a lot of my clients to be strategic when you're even telling your story.
Yeah, I mean, I've learned like over the last 40 years, they buy because they know, like, and trust you. That's
Hmm.
it. And if they don't know anything about you, if you're mechanical or whatever, then you're kind of lost because they don't
Hmm.
have that connection. And
Yes.
as a person that even sold vacuums door to door, in Vegas in the summer, yeah, you got to be able to connect with folks to sell vacuums door to door in the summer. So if somebody is just starting out in their business and they're trying to do the internet thing and pretty much gone is, just throw the product up on the internet and it'll sell itself. You've got to be able to share a little bit about yourself. So in your program, how do you get them just started? What's the first couple of steps to storytelling?
So I get them started by actually telling them my story. So of course that's the best way, to do it is I start with my story. I talk about how, I lost my mom when I was 13. I went on a journey of instability. I moved to in seven different homes over three different states. I went to four different high schools. And then I ended up pregnant when I was 18 years old. But then I changed my life around. I graduated at 22 with my bachelor's degree. I went on to start my legacy business and become a full-time entrepreneur at 25. So I
Wow.
always start with that because a lot of the stories are me talking about my journey. Because the women that I work with, a lot of them have dealt with trauma, they've dealt with abuse and different things like that. So the first thing is me telling them my story so that they can trust that I get it. Like I know what it feels like to go through things and feel like you're not good enough. And so then from
Mhm.
there, I ask them begin with the end in mind. What is the story that you like? What is it that you want to do? First of all, like, are you selling a product? Like, people want to know when you're in front of them, what do you want? Who are you? What do you have? And why should I care? So then we
Right.
start with that end in mind, and then we work our way backwards. So if somebody says, they have a story about something, well, how does that tie into the end result of what you're trying to do? Where you trying to take your customer or your client to? And then you'll know what story to tell that's relevant.
So what happens with, because I run into this quite often, people will tell me, well, I don't have a story, or nobody cares about what I have to say. And, I had an average childhood and nothing really major happened, and nope, didn't even go to college. What do you tell people when they say they just don't have a story?
Everybody, we all have a story. We all have a reason, especially like as entrepreneurs, because of course the people that I work with are entrepreneurs. So even if
Hmm.
it's like my dad, he doesn't have like this horrible story of childhood trauma and stuff like that. His story is on becoming an entrepreneur and not having the right people to help him, to coach him, on how to actually run a sustainable. He runs a multi-million-dollar company. So like his
Hmm.
story is just, it don't, a lot of times when people tell their story, they think about like it got to be the worst thing that happened to me. Like my dad's story is, he needed a mentor and didn't have one, so he had to learn certain things, and it may have taken a little longer to grow, to where he wanted to be. So we don't always have to think like trauma. Like, of course, I work
Right.
with a lot of people who deal with trauma, but every day we got a story to tell. You could tell a story about the. I went to the gym this morning. Traffic was bad. That's a story. I want to take a different route. So there's a story in everything. So yeah, I be telling them like, no, we're not gonna do that.
And are you also telling them they need to capture their stories? It's one thing to share a story one-on-one or in a small group, or back in the day for me, not door to door with a vacuum cleaner. But it's another thing to capture a story and actually share it on the internet, share it in social media. Are you telling them how important it is for them to do what we're doing right now? Jump in front
Mhm.
of a camera and start talking.
Yes, everybody who comes to my program walks out with a podcast. At least if you ain't do nothing else, putting it in a podcast, and we also write chapters in my program where they put their story in there. So yes, that's like everything. Document, document, document the journey.
And what if it's someone that's young, they're 19, 25, they're in that young space where they're just getting started, but they know they want to, do this business thing, and they're still going, nobody, respects me yet. They think I'm a kid, blah, blah, blah. They're not going to listen to my story. How do you address that?
Well, my daughter is only 11 years old, and she has a story. She sells hair bows. So I would give them that story. So her story is that, like a lot of times kids are cruel. Like a lot of times you lack confidence. So getting up and
Hmm.
putting that hair bow on top of her head and walking through them hallways, everybody have a story. My 3-year-old got a story. So we not gonna go there with it's no excuses. Like we could I tell them to come work with me and we'll pull something out. We'll figure that thing out. So
And then are you also teaching them how effective it is to have their story down? They're
yes,
not umming, they're not all of that. They've practiced. How
yes.
important is practicing?
It's very important, especially like because you have to know how to like I just quickly told my story in 30 seconds. I can take that same story and I can talk about it in 30 seconds, in 3 minutes, in 3 days, and the story never changes. So it's all about creating that framework. And then you can, as long as you're practicing, you can go and you can say what you need to say, so it's very important to just have a framework and a purpose, and then you can, whatever works, you can, tell your story like that.
Now, you mentioned earlier that, in your program, they walk out with, at least a chapter, if not a podcast, but they're ready to at least get the party started. So when is the program? Where is the program? Tell me.
So if you go to jessicatmoore.com, you can find out more information about how to learn how to tell your story, whether that's a chapter. I have a book where people submit chapters into my books, writing your own or putting it on a podcast. But jessicatmoore.com for more information.
You're amazing, Jessica. Thank you for being one of our VIP experts. Oh, yeah, I can't wait to see what's going to happen next month. And you are the best.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, you know what to do. If you didn't write it down, Jessica T. Moore, which happens to be her name.com, then go to Tigo Direct, type in Jessica, type in storytelling. Guess what? She's coming up. Connect with her. It costs you nothing. It costs her nothing. It's just our way to make sure we keep us all connected. I hope you enjoyed this episode. You know, I want you to come back next time. And as always, I'm Tigo. I'll talk to you next time.